Hey guys, thanks for stopping on in. Welcome back for more political forecasting analysis and commentary. You can click that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Heading into this one, going to be doing a hypothetical 2020 matchup here for the presidential election on the Electoral College map between Democrat Joe Biden and Republican Donald Trump, and how we feel this map might play itself out if these two were to go head-to-head against each other. Of course, this is actually a matchup that could potentially happen if Joe Biden decided he wanted to run in the Democratic primary. I think he'd have a pretty good shot at winning. His biggest challenge probably being Bernie Sanders in that sense. Really could see either of those guys potentially going on to win the nomination if they went against each other in that process. And then, of course, on the Republican side, pending something in the Mueller investigation that's an impeachable offense, Donald Trump probably going to be running on the Republican side here in 2020, or unless the establishment wing of the Republican Party maybe might try to mount a primary opposition to him in 2020. But even if that were the case, I still think Donald Trump would be able to win that rather easily against the establishment wing of the Republican Party. So at the end of the day, if these two guys are eligible and ready to run, I think this is definitely a matchup that we could be seeing. So on the right-hand side of the screen, we got a little bit of data to go over. In the upper right-hand corner, the 2016 presidential map, the blue states being Hillary Clinton's, the red and dark red states being Donald Trump's, with those dark red states being the ones that he flipped over to the Republicans where they had lost in the prior election back in 2012. And then the map below that, I brought up the 2008 presidential election map. That was the Obama-Biden matchup against McCain-Palin, with Obama being the blue states, McCain being the red states. And the reason I brought up the 2008 map instead of the 2012 map is I feel like the sentiment of going into the 2008 election is going to be somewhat similar to the sentiment going into the 2020 election, because you had the Republicans in the White House before that, and a little bit of a negative sentiment, of course, about that administration. There's a little bit of a negative sentiment right now about this current Republican administration as well. So I feel like this map is a little bit more relevant than the 2012 map, where the Democrats were trying to hold on and defend their position in the White House, as opposed to challenging the Republicans who had it prior. And then below that, the top favorable, unfavorable numbers are Donald Trump in some of the more recent polls. His average is about negative 13.3 points. His favorables have been going up a little bit over the past couple of months. They were more in the mid to upper 30s. Now we're seeing him more in the low to mid 40s, so he's been able to make some progress there. And then below that, we have some of the recent favorable, unfavorable polls for Joe Biden, who has just tremendous numbers. They're almost pretty similar over to what you would get in like a Bernie Sanders favorability poll, even a little bit better than Bernie Sanders in some of these polls, with a positive spread of in that mid 20s to mid 30s range on the positive side. So in terms of this matchup, I definitely see the favorabilities playing a big part in Biden having success. Also, in terms of this potential matchup, I think it would be just a really intriguing battle between these two. They've exchanged barbs publicly and some of the speeches and different things that they've given. So definitely would be an interesting race between these two guys. So coming into this one, I'm going to be going through and giving out the states that I think are no-brainers on both sides of this, and then going through a little bit more detail on the battleground states. So we're going to start with the Democrat states and giving those to Biden. Then we're going to do that for Trump. And then, like I said, going into those battleground states and discussing those. So starting off here, Joe Biden, no-brainer states are going to be Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, Colorado. And then moving into the Midwest, we'll say Illinois, and then the District of Columbia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, as well as Virginia, New York, Vermont. And that's going to be what we're going to set for Joe Biden for now. Some of these other states were very competitive in the 2016 presidential election, so we'll leave those up for now. And then moving on over to Donald Trump. And, of course, Donald Trump going against a very flawed candidate in Hillary Clinton, still losing the popular vote by 3 million votes. But the fact that he is the incumbent this time around, that can play a positive role in him trying to get reelected. Of course, name recognition, not the issue for Donald Trump. It's its unfavorable numbers that are working against him. But a lot of these states that he was able to carry by considerable margins, he might even end up losing to somebody like Joe Biden, just depending on how things play out over the next couple of years in terms of his favorable and unfavorable numbers. But nonetheless, we're still going to be doling him out states that he won by a convincing margin and states that you would generally think would go Republican. So starting off here, that's going to be Alaska, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska. And actually, I think in terms of these congressional districts, Biden might be able to pick up some of them, but it's not going to factor into our final decision. So we're just going to leave Nebraska in Trump's camp for now, especially since he was able to win all the congressional votes there as well back in 2016. Then moving on to Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, and then I'm also going to leave Kentucky and West Virginia up because even though Trump won these states by large margins, these are definitely states that can be in play for Democrats with the right kind of candidate. And I feel like Joe Biden is definitely more that kind of candidate than obviously somebody like Hillary Clinton was. So at this point, that's where we're going to keep the map for now. 209 on Joe Biden's side, 92 on Trump's side. Now we're going to work our way through the rest of these states here, starting out in the West and then moving our way east. So Nevada, I've talked about a lot of times, they have shifting demographics. They've been becoming a more blue state in recent years, and Hillary Clinton able to win the state, kind of a no-brainer. I feel like Joe Biden would be able to do the same. Arizona, I think that this could be an extremely competitive state, and Biden would have a great shot at winning Arizona over Donald Trump. Arizona wasn't all head over heels for Donald Trump by any means, even against an unpopular person on the Democratic side and Hillary Clinton only winning it by 3.5 percentage points. Biden's favorability, about a plus 40-point spread between him and Trump. I feel like Arizona, especially in a 2020 election where the demographics in a state like that are shifting even more, I think that Biden would be able to pick up Arizona against Trump. Moving on to Texas, another one of those southwestern states that having the shift in demographics that are helping Democrats a bit more, but a more conservative state than some of these other pocket states in the Midwest like Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada that have also been shifting more blue. A little bit more work for the Democrats to do in a state like Texas. Donald Trump, not necessarily the most popular politician by any means in Texas, especially because of his feud with the Bush family. You can see against Hillary Clinton only winning it by about 9 percentage points, which is a pretty competitive race between a Republican and a Democrat in this state. And I think Biden would be able to maybe even get this within 3 to 5 percentage points, but still at the end of the day, we're going to go on the more cautious side and give this one over to Donald Trump. Now, moving up to Missouri, a state that Obama had trouble with. He was able to keep things competitive in 2008. We'll look on this map here. Just 0.1 percentage points, but he lost it by a larger margin in 2012. And then, of course, 2016, Donald Trump going on to win it by nearly 19 percentage points. The rural part of the state, big Trump supporters, and then you have the big population centers in Kansas City and St. Louis that tend to be much more Democratic. I think it would be almost a coin flip between these two candidates in a state like Missouri, but since Trump was able to pick up the state by a rather significant margin, I feel like it's still probably going to be leaning a little bit towards Trump, even though I could see it as almost a coin flip scenario. Now we're going to move down to the Southeast. In Georgia, an extremely competitive state, not a whole lot of love here for Donald Trump compared to some of these other southeastern states like Alabama. He almost won by 30%, Mississippi 17%, Louisiana 20%, South Carolina 15%. Then you go to Georgia, and it was only a 5% win there for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, who was an extremely flawed candidate. And Georgia is one of these southeastern bloc states, of course, other than Florida, that the Democrats actually have a legitimate chance of winning here up in coming elections. And I feel like Biden, with his favorability numbers and that Atlanta area being a big population center in Georgia that's becoming more Democratic, I actually feel like Joe Biden would be able to win the state of Georgia, and that's going to carry on over into Florida. This is a state that Obama was able to win in 2008 and 2012. Clinton, unpopular candidate, was still able to keep things within about a 1% margin between her and Trump. I think that it would be, of course, Florida always a fairly competitive state, but I think Biden would be able to do pretty well here. I think his message would carry well in a state like Florida. And if Biden, we have him winning Georgia, we also think that that would carry over into the Southeast and Florida as well, and he'd be able to pick up that state. Moving up to the Northeast here, New Hampshire and Maine, two states that Hillary Clinton was able to win, even though they were competitive. And Joe Biden, his roots in Pennsylvania, he has some ties in a sense there to the Northeast. I feel like kind of a no-brainer here as well, especially since Clinton was able to win those states that we're going to be giving Biden, New Hampshire and Maine. And that puts Biden over the 270 needed to win this matchup, putting him at 279, but still going to work our way through the rest of these states. Now we're going to go and work our way west here over to West Virginia and Kentucky. So these are two states that I feel like Democrats can be much more competitive in with the right kind of candidates. And it's more having that populist, protectionist kind of message and also speaking well towards the coal industry. I think that helps Trump. And Biden, I feel like he can definitely make a lot more inroads into these states, clearly, than Hillary Clinton was able to do. But still, at the end of the day, Trump's margin of victory in these states was so significant that I still think he would be able to pull through in these states. Now, moving on here, Indiana. If Pence is still the vice president, which I assume he would be, that would definitely be a big advantage for Trump going in to a state like Indiana. So we feel like that's a pretty safe call on his side as well with that Mike Pence factor. Moving down here to North Carolina, a state that was very close between Clinton and Trump, of course, North Carolina, electing a Democratic governor more recently in a state that is shifting a little bit, it seems, more in a Democratic direction as the years move on, but very close toss-up situation. We go back to 2008. Barack Obama able to win the state by 0.4 percentage points over McCain. He wasn't able to pick up the state in 2012. And then, of course, Trump able to grab it by about 3.5 percentage points. But an African-American vote there that would definitely be overwhelmingly for Biden. And the fact that Clinton was able to keep North Carolina so close and competitive, even the fact that she was not a very good candidate there on the Democrat side, we feel like Joe Biden would be able to make up the difference here and get enough of that independent vote and more of a turnout to where he'd be able to flip North Carolina back over. Now, moving into the Midwest, basically the area of the country where the 2016 election was decided, Trump's message of protectionism was able to get him over the line in a lot of these states that typically go Democratic, but that wasn't the case in 2016 because you had a more globalist candidate there in Hillary Clinton that didn't have that message resonate with these particular voters. And Obama, more of a globalist himself, still able to consistently win a lot of these states in 2008 and 2012. Actually, all of these particular states, of course, winning Indiana in 2008, but then losing it in 2012. But all the other states definitely went over to Obama's side and was loyal to him. So we'll start with Minnesota here, a little bit more liberal of a state than maybe some of these other states. And Clinton was able to win it just by a narrow margin. We feel like Biden would be able to widen that gap and win it by a larger margin. And we're just going to kind of work our way from the most liberal to least liberal Midwestern states. So after Minnesota, I'd probably say the next in line in terms of liberal states is Michigan, especially with that huge population center in Detroit and the areas around that are big Democratic turnout situations. Of course, Clinton coming up just short and a very unpopular candidate in the state of Michigan. Bernie Sanders, that historic upset in that primary in Michigan. So not a lot of love in the state for Hillary Clinton. She was still almost able to win against Donald Trump. We feel like Biden's favorability is enough to push him over in Michigan. Moving on to the next most liberal state, I would say, in the Midwest, and that would be Wisconsin. So if we look back at the 2016 results, again, a state that does not have a whole lot of love for Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders doing very well in this state in that primary against Clinton. She lost to Donald Trump by only 0.7 percentage points. Again, this is a state where favorability makes a big difference. Obama was able to win it twice. We feel like Biden would be able to carry it as well. Moving on to Pennsylvania, which I feel like is slightly more to the left than states like Ohio and Iowa. And as we can see here, another one of those states, Clinton lost it by just 0.7% of the vote. This is a state that Obama carried in 2008 and 2012. You can see here he won it by over 10 percentage points against McCain back in 2008. We feel like Biden would be able to claim Pennsylvania as well. And now moving just to Ohio and Iowa, two states that Obama was able to carry in 2008 and 2012. That flipped over to Donald Trump here. You can see Iowa went for Trump by about 10 percentage points. We compare that to 2008, where it went for 10 percentage points to Obama. So a big flip there over the course of 8 years. And then Ohio, an 8-point margin that Donald Trump was able to win. And you go back and you had about a 4-point margin for Obama back in 2008. We think that these states would be pretty competitive between Biden and Trump. But again, the favorability numbers being such a wide gap between these two politicians, and the fact that Obama was able to have success in these states in Biden's ties to Obama, we feel like Biden would be able to seal the deal here in these two Midwestern states as well. So the final score, if Joe Biden decides to run, as long as he doesn't make terrible gaffes along the way, and in comparison to Trump, who it seems like makes gaffes on the regular, I don't even think it necessarily would hurt him as much as it might have in the past. We see the final score being Biden 374 to Trump 164. So kind of a convincing win here, certainly, for the Democrats. And that's how we would have, at least at this point, the map in the Electoral College playing itself out between Trump and Biden. So thanks, guys, for stopping on in for today's video. For more political forecasting analysis and commentary, you can check out all of our videos over on our YouTube channel and click that subscribe button for more. Thanks for stopping on in. We hope to see you guys in future videos. Bye.